Now, welcome along. So we're at Vodafone HQ in Dublin, where we've just watched Ireland beat Russia. Andy Dunne alongside me. So we were just doing a Q&A down there. We were having a chat with the good people here. The scoreboard looks okay-ish, especially towards the end, but there are many buts.
Well, there are certainly concerns around execution. However, when the team is asked, I suppose, what they were needed to do, it was a bonus point win to make sure we get into a quarter final. So if we start, I suppose, with one positive, that was achieved. The manner in which we did it, there are still lingering concerns around execution. There are probably lingering concerns around our confidence levels, contributing to that. And then obviously there's that bad luck and the misfortune for Jordy Murphy. But there were some positives.
Okay. When you talk about the confidence, is that something just visibly you're seeing and sensing from the team?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, unforced errors that, even though it was a greasy ball, players of the calibre of Bundy, Aki, I think 4 to 5 unforced handling errors in those conditions when, there were, players not at his level in the Russian side handling the ball slightly better at times in the same tricky circumstances. I think little indicators like that that are not typical of his standard and performance levels suggest probably just a lack of confidence at the moment. And that's natural given the shock that would have happened and the shock factor of that Japanese result. Yeah. Maybe the lingering doubts that crept in from that hammering we took in Twickenham, even though it was a friendly. There are issues like that you see across the board that I suppose make you feel a little unsure. Again, about quarters. Today has left us with a very simple task of just simply beat Samoa. We don't even need the bonus point to ensure a quarter-final qualification. But performance levels are certainly nowhere near where they were 11 months ago when we beat the All Blacks.
Like when you consider at the 2011 World Cup, Ireland put 62 points on Russia. It's hard to escape the feeling that a South Africa or a New Zealand or an England or any top tier nation really homing and going about their business well would have beaten that Russia side by 50, 60 points.
Yeah, you would expect that to be the case. The Russian side has only got, I think, 3 players playing outside the Russian league. Their own domestic league is not a hotbed of rugby, certainly at a competitive level compared to top 14, Pro 14, English Premiership or Super Rugby. So 3 guys, I think, plying their trade in France. They are World Cup minnows, and it is a game we would expect to get a bonus point. The bigger sides probably 50-60, or at least the sides who are playing with a greater degree of confidence and style at the moment. You would imagine the likes of New Zealand and South Africa watching that game are not awake at night currently based on the Irish form.
So if somebody didn't catch the game, if they were at work and they're just kind of checking us out now across the afternoon and they're saying, I'm going to watch it later, they might have seen the stats, and Ireland had 13 offloads. Ireland made the guts of 500 metres, certainly 450 odd metres, and they might think, oh, well, there might have been a bit of champagne rugby in there. If anything, there was a longish period from 37 minutes when they scored the third try until the bonus point was secured, I think 20 minutes to go. There was a period again where Ireland, I mean, running out of ideas might have been way too tough a way of putting it, but where Ireland were certainly not tearing Russia apart with offloads and champagne rugby. It was back to, again, one-off rugby territory for a good chunk of that period.
Yeah, it got a little worrying, I think, in between that period. We were leading up to the 60th minute and we still hadn't got our bonus point try, and the preceding 15 minutes of that period was really our default position at the moment. If we're going to play rugby that seems comfortable or natural to us, it seems to be pass to the guy beside you and run into the opposition. And while we held possession doing that, it doesn't flatter us. It tires us a little. It means we hold on to possession, but we don't look like we're very dynamic or threatening. And I did get a little concerned creeping up to that 60th minute. Russia were due to get their yellow card, the sin bin man back on. At 10 minutes of that period, they'd 14 men and we didn't score. Again, would be an indicator that we're not quite creating as much as we should. We did have 13 offloads, which is an improvement again, 7 against Japan. And it's something we probably need to embrace, even though we're not doing it that well. It's a good sign that we're trying them, because I don't believe we can just beat South Africa or New Zealand by playing that physical pass to the guy beside me and run into the opposition style. It's not enough to take on these sides who are very, at least our match in physicality and probably a little ahead of us in terms of skill levels and execution of that. So we do need to embrace the fact that we had an increase to 13 offloads. It's the most we've had in any international for some time, tempered by the fact it was a Russian side with a poor defence. But it's something we need to embrace as a positive, I think, for sure.
One point you made pre-game was you weren't so sure about the choice to play Sexton. In the end, it seems to have worked out fine. He got a reasonable amount of minutes. He seems to have emerged unscathed, and then that can only be a good thing, I suppose. So it was a bit of a gamble, but it hasn't backfired at least.
Yeah, and I'm delighted that's the case. Retrospectively, looks like an excellent decision. I felt we didn't need to risk him going in. We certainly didn't need him to beat Russia. It wasn't like he had to be on the pitch to ensure we were going to be victorious. And in that case, I was concerned he might just pick up a knock, or he wasn't quite 100 going in. But he looked back to his own, composed best for periods. I thought it was really nice to see quite a bit of emotion during the anthem. He didn't take the captaincy lightly, and he was on record about how much an honour it was since he's a young boy that he always dreamed about playing for Ireland, but to captain us in a World Cup. I think it's nice to see top players display or allow that emotion come out, and he looked very emotional during the anthem. I thought that was nice to see. You can see how much it means to him. And he added in some nice little variations, lovely little grubber kick for Peter O'Mahony's try. He clearly place kicked with relative ease, and there looked to be in no discomfort, and I think it was the smart move then, whip him off at half time, and it gives him a nice little run into Samoa now, and a game he ought to play. Once fortune's on our side, he ought to play the full 80 minutes, and it gives us a nice lead into that quarters.
We'd Ronan O'Gara on last night, and he was saying in terms of team selection for the quarter-final, all bets are off in a host of areas. He said Tadhg Furlong will play, Rory Best will play, James Ryan will play. He didn't say anyone's definite for the back row. Murray and Sexton will play, and he said Earls and Carney. And he said after that, all bets are off. Did anyone make a big impression today, and do you go along with that?
I do. I think we're probably down to 5 or 6 shoe-ins in the starting lineup, and I don't see that as a negative. I think
either did he, by the way.
Yeah, I think it's important that 12 guys, 10 guys, or maybe 20 guys rather, have a sleepless night about selection in any competitive knockout sport, and we've seen that with the Ferguson United teams, with Brian Cody's Kilkenny, with Jim Gavin's Dublin. A lot of great sides rely on internal competition levels and training to make the side, and nobody's guaranteed their spot, and these kind of lines that we hear. So I would go along with Raj in terms of those 5 or 6 names being a shoe-in. I was impressed by Rhys Ruddock today. Again, he put in huge amount of work just in terms of ball carrying, defensive tracking, hitting rucks. He's an option in the line out, and when you see Jordy Murphy taking that rib injury, it's highly unlikely. I think he'll feature in either of the next 2 games. If he's not able to finish a game due to a rib injury, it's usually a minimum of about 4 weeks. So I think Rhys Ruddock really made a couple of strides forward today, and other than that, Larmour looked lively when he came on. Conway was lively as well. It'll be interesting to see the combinations they go with. With Carney and Earls looking like a shoe-in, it leaves 1 from 3 really with Larmour, Stockdale and Conway. So it'll be an interesting choice there. Difficult choice for the management.
What would your choice be from afar, not seeing them in training?
Right now, probably Conway. He looks to be quite sharp. He's super footwork. He's good in the air. So yeah, I think at the moment I would probably go for him just based on the form of the World Cup alone.
It seems very tough to leave out try scoring Jacob Stockdale.
Yeah, it does. I think at the moment he's got star quality, he's got that X factor, but I think in terms of his all-round game, going into a quarter final where teams are going to look to target potential weaknesses. That might be in terms of Stockdale's defence or the ball going in behind them. Yeah. I think Conway is probably a little more polished as an all-round player, if maybe not the same star quality or X factor as a finisher.
Meanwhile, as the games tick by and Robbie Henshaw continues to rehabilitate during them, you have to increasingly conclude that they brought him out here for the quarter final, and they figured, a bit like what was it, Scarlets a couple of years ago at the Aviva, he'll come back and he'll come back ready. I mean, that's how it's shaping up, isn't it? And is that a good idea? Is he that important? Does he make that much of a difference if he is able to pitch up for the quarter final?
I suppose from my point of view, I'm looking at the nature of the injury. He had a shoulder reconstruction after the Italy game 2 seasons ago, and he came back in 11 weeks, which is borderline freakish, given a shoulder reconstruction. He did huge amount of rehabilitation, but the thing that was really incredible was the pitch he hit the game at, that European quarter final against Scarlets. He was man of the match. He played, I think, 75 minutes. He was so physical and aggressive, and I think that wasn't lost on Joe Schmidt. There are certain players who require 3-4 games at 80 minutes to even get to the pitch that's required, and he clearly is one of those players who doesn't require that. And there's been a lot of talk maybe about Sexton being a very similar type of player who doesn't need lead-in times. So I think Joe Schmidt and the management side certainly looked at it and took a gamble, but a hamstring injury is slightly different to a shoulder injury. It can be one that nags in the back of the mind, in terms of the stop-start nature of these games, the small sprints that are regularly required as opposed to running at a certain pace. If he was a tight head prop with a hamstring injury who doesn't have to be as explosive around the field, I'd say probably I'd be less concerned. I think it's just a mark of how they rate him in terms of his overall contribution to the side, that they're willing to stick with him. Only available really in a quarter final. It'd be interesting to see, does he bench against Samoa even for 15-20 minute run. But I think it's a measure of how highly they rate his contribution to the side.
Okay, so to sum up, job done today. It was always going to be that way, I think, but you think of the sharpness, the level of sharpness around the Scotland performance, and then Japan was Japan. You wouldn't say that Scottish sharpness was back today if somebody hasn't seen the game yet. Like, there were mistakes and there were individual errors and just a lack of penetration at times. So it's hard to know how serious it was, but there is still a bit of a fog hanging over things after today's performance. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. It was not convincing. It wouldn't instill you with huge confidence about our second next game being a quarter final. But it's on the back of probably our greatest ever Rugby World Cup upset. Sure. And at times we've just got to be pragmatic and say, right, the job that was required was to get a bonus point win. From minute 40 to minute 60, that actually looked in doubt. Yeah. But we did have the wherewithal to get that fourth try, get the bonus point, get a fifth try, and I suppose come away relatively unscathed, other than Jordy Murphy. One injury in a modern rugby international isn't too bad. Yeah. Unfortunately, but there's a fog hanging over the overall performance levels. I think there's question marks over confidence and execution of skills, in unforced mistakes, and that adds to that general malaise that we can feel within the Irish squad at the moment. But we're still alive, and we're still capable of a one-off huge performance like we had against Scotland. Yeah,
we're all very demanding here on the sidelines is the thing. Andy Dunne, thanks very much for that. Yes, our rugby coverage is with thanks to Vodafone, team of us, everyone in. Stay tuned, offthebull.com for all our rugby coverage across the World Cup.